It's the middle of the night. Your wife is asleep. You run to the bathroom. You throw up. You go back to bed. You can't sleep. You're mumbling to yourself, arms flailing. This goes on for weeks. Back to the bathroom, back to the floor. This man is about to become the richest person on the planet. But right now, it's 2008. And both SpaceX and Tesla are weeks away from dying. So why doesn't he collapse? Why doesn't he say, enough, I'll sell everything, buy an island, done? He could have done exactly that 10 years earlier. He had $22 million. He was 30 years old. If someone had told him, Elon, just walk away, technically he had every reason to, but he didn't walk away. And what I want to talk to you about today is not how rich he became. What I want to talk about is what's inside this man's head, what operating system he runs on, why some people crumble under the same pressure that others convert into fuel. Are you ready? Let's go. South Africa, early 1980s. Little Elon has a problem. The kids at school don't like him. That's actually an understatement. One day, they throw him down a flight of stairs. Then, they keep kicking him while he's on the ground. He ends up in the hospital. A child in that situation has two options. You either fold inward or you learn to fight. Elon did neither. What he did instead was stranger than both. He buried himself in books. 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. He read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica, cover to cover. Then fiction. Then science fiction, Asimov, Douglas Adams. And in those books, he saw something. That humanity's biggest problems could actually be solved. That idea drove itself into his skull like a nail and never came out. Now here's something I need you to understand right at the start, because everything else builds on this. If you want to understand Elon Musk, you have to understand that this man never once asked himself, how do I make money? He always asked, what problem do I want to solve? Money, to him, was not a destination. It was a score on a scoreboard. And that difference changes everything. By the time he gets to university, Elon has another obsession, strategy games, specifically a board game called Diplomacy. He plays for hours, sometimes through entire nights. And this isn't entertainment. In that game, he's learning something. To win, you don't need empathy. You need strategy. What matters is not what your opponent feels, but what they're going to do. Years later, when someone asks him why he's so drawn to war games, his answer is short and completely unadorned. I am wired for war. Hold on to that sentence. Because Elon is going to say it again across decades. Different companies, different crises, different people. It's not a slogan. It's his operating system. After university, he moves through Canada into America, gets accepted to Stanford, and then stops. 2 days later, he drops out because the internet revolution is starting and he can feel it. His first company, Zip2, is built with his brother Kimball, not in a garage, but in a cheap office. No beds, they shower at the YMCA, they sleep on the floor. And right here you see that first characteristic Elon move. When investors come to visit, they put their small computer inside a giant rack frame, so it looks like a massive server. Showmanship is salesmanship. Remember that phrase. It's going to come back over and over again. 4 years later, they sell Zip2 for $307 million. Elon's cut, $22 million. He's 30 years old. Journalists find him and ask, so what now? Buy an island? His answer, I could have bought an island, but what actually satisfied me was building the company, not making the money. I'm putting almost all of it into a new one. And he means it. He takes most of that $22 million and pours it into X.com, which becomes PayPal. This pattern repeats throughout his entire life. You make money, you put it back into a company, you start again. 20 years later, when he sells Tesla stock, he puts it into Twitter. Money is not for accumulating. Money is for getting back in the game. Now, before we get to that big gamble, before I walk you through that 2008 crisis in the way it deserves, I need to explain something about how Elon's mind works. A concept that runs through everything he does. He calls it the idiot index. After leaving PayPal, Elon decides he wants to build rockets. First thing he does? He goes to the Palo Alto Public Library and starts reading rocket engineering textbooks. He calls experts to borrow old engine manuals. Then he does a calculation. What do the raw materials for a rocket actually cost? Carbon fiber, metal, fuel. What's the actual commodity price? And how many times more expensive is the finished rocket? The answer? 50 to 100 times more expensive. That gap, that ratio between raw material cost and finished product price, that is the idiot index. The higher the ratio, the more idiotic the manufacturing process. And Elon applies this to everything for the rest of his life. When a supplier quotes him $120,000 for a part, he asks his engineer how much more complicated it is than a garage door opener. The engineer can't answer. Elon tells someone else to build it. They build it. Cost $5,000. This is why he beats his competition. Where others say, that's just how it's done, Elon asks, why is it done that way? Now we get to the big gamble. 2001 to 2002. Elon has decided he wants to build a rocket company. He looks at NASA's prices and laughs. He says, I'll build my own. Everyone around him calls him crazy. An internet entrepreneur with no aerospace experience trying to break into the most technically demanding industry on Earth. But Elon says something that explains everything. People think technology just automatically improves. It doesn't. If we don't do it, it won't happen. It can even go backward. That sentence matters, because to him, working slowly is not just inefficiency. It's actively delaying humanity's future. It sounds like an exaggeration, but Elon genuinely believes it. And here's the thing about genuine belief. It's contagious. Walter Isaacson writes in the biography that even when what Elon said sounded like crazy talk, you believed him because he believed it. And Elon uses that contagion deliberately. SpaceX is founded. He assembles a team. And from day one, his management style is crystalline. You work every waking hour, or this floor becomes your bedroom. He's already sleeping in the office. And here's something critical about him that you need to lock in right now, because it underpins everything. Elon never asks his team to do something he isn't doing. If he's working at 2 in the morning, that's the expectation. If he's on the factory floor at 5 in the morning, he expects others to be there. This matters. Because the way you work with someone like this is not through loyalty. It's through commitment. And those are very different things. How does he hire? Elon personally interviews every engineer taken on at SpaceX, every single one. And what does he ask? Not resume questions. He asks them to walk him through the hardest problem they've ever solved. Because a real engineer can describe exactly how they got out of a real problem. Anyone who can't describe it didn't actually solve it. Someone else did. He's not looking for credentials. He's looking for attitude. Skills can be taught, he says. Changing attitude requires a brain transplant. And if an engineer shows up to a meeting unable to answer questions about their own area, he says it out loud in front of everyone. If you don't know this, what are you doing here? This is not how modern corporate culture operates. But here's the question worth sitting with. Where are SpaceX's competitors right now? What's Boeing's launch record? How often did NASA put something on a pad? Before we get into 2008 and what actually happened in those weeks when everything was dying, I want to give you something. Because without understanding his 5-step algorithm, the survival story doesn't fully make sense. But first, real quick, if this kind of deep dive into how the world's greatest builders actually think is the kind of content you want more of, hit subscribe right now. We go inside one mind per episode. No noise, no headlines, just the operating system. And if this episode is already hitting different, leave a like. It genuinely helps other people find it. Okay, back to the algorithm. Elon's 5-step process took shape over years. On the assembly lines at Tesla's Nevada factory, in the SpaceX hangars, in the tunnels of the Boring Company. It was applied, tested, refined, and then applied again. Step 1. Question every requirement. When Elon asks in a meeting why something is done a certain way, and the answer is the safety department required it or legal mandated it, he doesn't accept that. Who specifically asked for this? He says, I want a name. Because to him, a department cannot set a requirement. Only a person can. And people are wrong. Everything, except the laws of physics, is a recommendation. Step 2. Delete. Remove everything you possibly can. And here's his benchmark. If you didn't end up adding back at least 10% of what you deleted, you didn't delete enough. Here's what that looks like in practice. One day on the Tesla assembly line, he notices fiberglass strips being attached by an expensive, slow robot. He asks what they're for. Engineers say the noise team required them to reduce vibration. He asks the noise team. They say the engineering team required them to reduce fire risk. The engineering team says they didn't require anything. Nobody knows who originally created this requirement. Elon says, record the sound inside the car with the fiberglass, then without it, and tell me if you can hear the difference. They can't. Delete it. Cost down. Speed up. Step 3. Simplify and organize. But only after step 2. If you simplify before deleting, you optimize things that shouldn't exist at all. Step 4. Accelerate. But again, only after the first 3. Speeding up a broken process just breaks it faster. Step 5. Automate. This comes last. Elon's biggest personal mistake was doing this first. At Tesla's Nevada factory, he tried to automate everything from day one. It collapsed. He stood in front of his entire workforce and said, excessive automation was a mistake. To be precise, my mistake. Humans are underrated. He said it publicly. He took the blame. Then he moved on. His executives had heard the algorithm so many times they could mouth the words along with him while he said it. Now we're in 2008, and I want to be honest with you. This part is heavy. Because this isn't just a business crisis. This is a man being pushed to the absolute edge of what a human being can hold. SpaceX has lost 3 rockets in a row, each one worth tens of millions of dollars, each one years of work. After the 3rd explosion, Elon walks into the factory. Everyone is waiting to hear what he says. He says, SpaceX is in this for the long haul. Come hell or high water, we are going to make this work. The money is almost gone. Tesla is simultaneously in a cash crisis. 2 companies dying at the same time. His then partner, Tallulah Riley, describes those nights like this. Elon would pace the room for hours, mumbling to himself, arms flailing. He would wake up screaming. He would go to the bathroom and throw up, then go back to his desk. Excellence is the capacity to take pain. When I first read that line, I thought it was a motivational quote. After reading this book, I think it's a biological fact. Some people have a higher threshold for sustained suffering, and Elon's is in a category most people will never access. Something else happens in this period that matters enormously. Years earlier, Elon had been pushed out of PayPal, his own company, by his own co-founders. It was painful, genuinely painful. But after that day, Elon did not burn the bridges. He stayed in contact with Peter Thiel, with the other founders. He didn't broadcast the bitterness. And now in 2008, with SpaceX on the edge of death, Peter Thiel's fund puts $20 million into SpaceX. Elon says later, "They stabbed me like Caesar in the Senate. I could have walked away and told them they were all terrible, but if I had done that, Founders Fund wouldn't have come through in 2008. And SpaceX would be dead. Don't burn bridges. That's also part of the algorithm." And at this exact moment, he makes the final call. Put the last of his own money into the fourth rocket. No safety net, no backup plan. The fourth rocket launches, and it works. SpaceX survives. But here's the detail that tells you everything about how this man operates. 3 days before that launch, an engineer discovers faulty capacitors in the power boxes. Those capacitors are sitting in an electronics supply store in Minnesota. An intern in Texas gets dispatched to Minneapolis. Meanwhile, another engineer removes the power boxes from the rocket on a remote Pacific island, takes a boat to the main island, sleeps on a concrete slab outside the airport, waiting for a morning flight, connects through Honolulu to Los Angeles, drives to SpaceX headquarters. They meet the intern who flew in from Minnesota, swap the capacitors into the boxes. Then both of them get on Elon's jet and fly back to the island. On the plane, Elon goes through every detail of the circuitry with the engineer. They land, they reassemble the rocket, they launch. That is what maniacal sense of urgency is our operating principle actually means in practice. Not a slogan on a wall. A man on a private jet at midnight interrogating a circuit diagram. Now I have to ask you something. Does this kind of operation come without cost? No. The cost is enormous. The women in Elon's life, the friends, the family, they all describe the same thing. Living with a man who is not in love with you, but with a mission. His first wife, Justine, describes it this way. One day, he told her they were moving to Los Angeles. He didn't explain why. They moved. Grimes, who was with him for years, wrote a song about him. It's called The Player of Games. And the most important line is this: he'll always love the game more than he loves me. That's not an accusation. It's an observation. And Elon doesn't deny it. He says, running SpaceX and Tesla simultaneously was almost impossible. Everything was just work all the time. And when someone once told him, "You don't have to be in a state of war at all times," his answer was, "It's part of my default settings. Extended periods of calm are unsettling to me." Now let me tell you about the factory. Tesla has to produce 5,000 Model 3s per week, or the company goes bankrupt. Elon has done the math. He repeats that number in every meeting like a mantra. And then he does something that should tell you everything about his leadership philosophy. He moves into the factory, sleeping bag on the production floor. And one day, he notices a station where an expensive, slow robot is gluing fiberglass strips to battery packs. You already know what happens. He asks what the strips are for. Nobody knows who originally required them. He runs a sound test. No difference. Delete. The robot comes out. 2 humans replace it. Faster. Then he does something else. He takes the engineers' desks and physically moves them to the edge of the assembly line. "You sit here," he says. "Every time a light flashes red, you see it. Every time the line stops, you hear it. Because your hands need to be on the stove. If your hand is on the stove and it gets hot, you pull it off immediately. If it's someone else's hand, your reaction is slower." He eliminates that delay by removing the distance. He sets up monitors showing every station on the line with a green or red light, and then he walks toward every red light he sees. He calls it walking to the red. What's the problem here? Who's responsible for this part? Get them over here. Why does this sensor keep tripping? Who calibrated it? Do we even need this sensor? He makes 100 decisions a day on that floor. At least 20% will be wrong, he says. We'll correct them later, but if I stop making decisions, we die. He picks up a can of orange spray paint and walks the line. Looks at a robot. Stay or go? If the answer is go, he marks it with an orange X. Workers tear it out. Weeks later, Tesla is producing 5,000 cars a week. Here's something about Elon that almost nobody talks about. He may be the most disciplined practitioner of mental isolation in the business world. People who worked with him described watching him sit completely still, staring at a wall, for hours. His partner at the time describes waking up in the middle of the night to find him seated on the edge of the bed, completely motionless, eyes open, staring. He stayed that way until dawn. No input. No stimulation. Just the mind working on a problem in total silence. The modern world is built on the assumption that more input equals better thinking. Elon operates on the exact opposite principle. And the solutions he extracts from that silence are what his competitors can't replicate. One more thing about how he motivates people. It's not just money. It's not status. It's the way he frames the mission. He doesn't say we're building cars. He says we are giving humanity a sustainable future. He doesn't say we're launching rockets. He says we are making the human species multiplanetary. And when he says it, there's no performance in it. He means it completely. Isaacson writes that even when it sounded like insanity, you believed him because he believed it. In one production meeting, he stops, looks at his engineering team, and says, a fully reusable rocket is the difference between a single-planet civilization and a multiplanetary one. The engineer standing next to him is thinking, the part I'm holding in my hands right now is connected to that sentence. And then that engineer works a little harder. Let me give you one final scene. Elon is in a Starship meeting. He's watching the timeline slides. He gets increasingly cold. These timelines are a catastrophic failure. There is no reason this should take this long. He decrees daily meetings, every night, 7 days a week. We run the algorithm every single night. We question requirements, we delete, we simplify. That is what we did to fix Raptor. How long until the booster is on the launch pad? 10 days, he's told. That's too long. This is critical for all of human destiny. You cannot change destiny working 9 to 5. He picks up his bag. He moves into the hangar at Cape Canaveral. He sleeps there. He says, wherever Napoleon was, that's where his armies performed best. A general on the front line changes everything. All bad news should be given loudly and often, he says. Good news can be mentioned quietly, once. So what do you actually take away from all of this? If there's one psychological principle from Elon Musk's life that you can put to work starting today, I think it's this. Question your requirements. Not just at work, in your life. The things you do every single day, because that's how it's done. Do you know who originally made that requirement? Do you know their name? Did physics dictate it? Or did someone once say, this is how we do it, and you accepted it and never looked back? Elon's deepest strength is not that he builds rockets. It's that he genuinely does not believe the sentence, that's how it's done. Behind every that's how it's done, there is a human being. That human being was fallible. That human being may have been wrong, and you are allowed to ask why. Everything except the laws of physics is a recommendation. That's what this episode has really been about. When Elon was throwing up in the bathroom, when he launched the 4th rocket, when he kept Tesla alive, none of it was just this. But without this, none of it happens. See you in the next one.